Welcome to the Wellness for Women show, where we talk about life, weight loss and everything in between. I'm Faye Caseman, founder of the AAA Way Life and Weight Loss Programme, and I'm here to help you put together the pieces of life and weight loss for one last time. This is an episode of the Wellness for Women show, filmed live in the free Facebook group. Hello, and welcome to episode number 63 of the Wellness for Women show, the importance of feeling and releasing your emotions. What we resist persists. So when I first heard this, it was a real light bulb moment for me. I hadn't known at the time, and I'd even scoffed with my accountability partners when I started my weight loss journey, that I had nothing to journal on, no emotions. I was just fine. It was just nothing came up. It was just a normal day-to-day life that I had. What I didn't know at that point in time was that I had bought into a story, a set of lies I had created for myself, and I didn't even know I had done it. The lies being that life was life and you just had to get on with it. That there's no point whining or crying over spilt milk, as the saying goes. Feelings are bad and they should not be felt. Having feelings makes you weak. You see, I developed a pattern of burying my feelings so deeply and denying them for so long that I'd almost convinced myself that they didn't exist. I'd wrapped a tight cloak of defense around myself from all the things that I perceived made me feel bad. And I would then try and wear on the outside my perceived resilience and strength like some kind of badge of honor. But the problem was, it was a bunch of shoulds and lies. And so today I want to tell you some of my story, because you haven't got all day, and to see whether this resonates with you. So let me know in the chat if you're watching this live or on replay, if it resonates with you. If you're catching this later on YouTube or podcast, then leave me a comment wherever you can. So, quick introduction from me. As usual, I am Faye Casement. I'm a certified life coach, and I want to help women ditch diet drama and find more joy in the weight loss process with my simple food and life freedom method, the AAA Way, because I believe that you deserve to feel good inside and out. And if you want to work with me or find out more about working with me, check out the links in the description. So, back to my story time. I spent decades, and I mean decades, telling myself I was fine. And I just had to be strong, that having feelings was weak, and that burying them because I thought having feelings was wrong, or I buried them because I thought that feelings was wrong, and because I didn't like how I felt when they came up. And I'm still discovering where all this comes from and still unpicking the threads. And even as I was writing this at the weekend, I'm going to be honest and say that this was actually me avoiding my feelings. Although writing these shows are really part of my life healing journey, and in sharing, we can learn from each other. I'll do a little bit more about that later. So, taking a trip back in time to when I was little, I can see now how badly I buried my feelings. So I remember as a child, I hated, and I mean hated, being tickled. I mean, I really detested it. I hated the feeling of not being in control. I hated that my treacherous body would laugh and giggle when inside I was screaming, "Stop, this feels horrible." And I can remember getting really, really annoyed about it and with anybody who would tickle me. And I can only have been about 7 or 8 when I started to declare to anyone who would even vaguely come near me that I am not ticklish. Was this a defense mechanism so that they wouldn't try to tickle me? Or was it that I wanted attention from them trying and me being able to show off my will of steel? Honestly, I don't know. But from that moment on, I told myself repeatedly that I was not ticklish. I'm not ticklish. I'm not ticklish, over and over on loop. And I would hold my breath if anybody did tickle me and repeat to myself, I'm not ticklish, I'm not ticklish, so that bloody giggle wouldn't come out. And eventually, I genuinely didn't feel ticklish anymore. And to be honest, I still don't. And if I'm honest, I sometimes do wish that I was ticklish. I feel like I've ruined it for myself. You know, those shared moments that you can have with loved ones, and feel like I've missed out a bit. But that's another story. So I also have these memories as well of not wanting to seem scared at horror movies as well, you know, feeling so embarrassed by these emotions that, again, I buried them for some reason, so that I couldn't, you know, I couldn't show how afraid I was. I had to pretend that I was not scared so as to save face, when really I was shitting myself. I believed I couldn't. No, I shouldn't show weakness. Goodness knows where all of this started, in all honesty. I know it will have been in my childhood somewhere, because that's where our beliefs come from. I didn't have a bad upbringing. I don't even have any memories that I can think of as to why it would start. It's just something that my brain cottoned onto and stuck with, that there's certain feelings that I perceive as good and some that are bad, and the ones that I feel are bad are ones that I still seek to avoid. So I don't necessarily look to watch horror movies, or I don't look to watch films that I know are going to make me overly emotional unless I'm really feeling that. Maybe you're the same, maybe you're different, I don't know. This is why I wanted to do this show, to find out what other people are like. You know, are there certain emotions that you think are good or bad? You know, like, we also, societally, we're told, we've been conditioned as women as well, you know, that we're not supposed to show anger, for example, you know. So there's all these kind of things can play out in our stories and in our lives. And so with coaching, belief coding, all the kinds of tools that I've got in my toolbox, one day I'll be able to figure all of this out. And what I really realized was that actually burying my feelings was actually a weaker option. And why, you might be asking? Well, because ultimately I know that I've hidden from them. I was scared to deal with them, or what I thought maybe might be the perceptions of others if I showed them. And this ultimately, over the years, has impacted relationships, not only with myself, but with others. I know that I have at times suppressed anger, disappointment, sadness, other emotions that I deem to be embarrassing, and ones that I didn't want to have, which perhaps then led to me tolerating more than was healthy, or not communicating as healthily as a result as I could have done. But the thing is, you can only hold those things down. You can only hold feelings down for so long, and then they would come out in mega bursts, and then it would just seem like I was overreacting. You know, cue some shame, cue defensiveness, and more thoughts, you know, just reinforcing my brain that feelings were bad, feelings are confusing, feelings don't feel nice. Bury them quick, hide them at all costs. And round the same loop I would go. A loop that I didn't even know that I was in until I started my life coaching journey. And I can see now how it's all played out in my life, and how it was ultimately not great for my wellness. And that's why I wanted to talk about it again today. So I want to talk about how it is important to feel the feels, and that you don't have to be worried or scared or ashamed of them. How you can work on accepting your emotions and feelings, and that they're part of you, and that you can start to work on your beliefs and your thoughts and your emotions if you want to work on them and change them. And all of this delicious insight is thanks to my weight loss journey. I didn't know at the time, but actually my journey was a healing one. As I tackled my relationship with food, I found out more about myself and how I ticked, and I changed. You know, boy, have I changed, and all for the better in my book. And when we want to lose weight, all we've been taught by the diet industry is to focus on food and exercise. In fact, I saw an advert on my Facebook profile, shock and horror, really, on the Book of Faces. I'm not sure which one it was underneath, but there was loads of comments with regards to this advert. Anyway, no surprises really. And in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have gone in there, because I do tend to find these things a little bit triggering, because I find it quite hard to see people struggling, and see people struggling especially with self-image and worrying about their relationships with food. And you know, I just want to kind of help everybody, and of course I can't. You know, it's so people will choose to get help by me if they resonate. But what I saw in there is a comment that I see all the time, that weight loss is easy. You just have to eat less or move more, or eat less and move more. Boom, mic drop. No shit, Sherlock. Thank you, oh wise one. So without risking turning into full sarcasm mode, because yeah, I know it's the lowest form of wit, I do have a tendency to roll my eyes when I see this comment more than others, because it's such an oversimplification. It's beyond belief. It is a belief that has been instilled in us, and then when we don't find weight loss easy and we struggle to eat less and move more, which is supposedly so simple, we start to feel broken. And again, we then get emotion come up. We start to feel like there's something wrong with us, and all the other thoughts and feelings that we can think about ourselves when we're not thinking about ourselves with love. And ultimately, weight loss is more than just what the in and the out. It is for the actual weight loss, but there's so much more goes into it in terms of what you eat, when, how much, etc. And that all stems from your beliefs, your thoughts, and your emotions. So eating and moving are, like I say, the byproducts ultimately of how your mind and soul is all fitting together in that moment, which is why a gentle and exploratory method of weight loss like the AAA way is a genuinely life-changing process, because it's about healing your relationship with food rather than just knuckling through with your weight loss. Okay, so rant over on the weight loss side, but going back to where I was when I was writing this, I said earlier that I'd not been feeling great, that actually writing this show was my way of avoiding my feelings. And so the tail end of the week before, for a couple of days, I'd been feeling a bit low, really drained and really tired. And I could feel that I was resisting something and avoiding something, but I just wasn't sure what it was. And again, I've got all the skills and all the tools to work through my feelings, but yet I'd been resisting doing it. So what I was resisting was persisting, and I was continuing to feel low and drained. Light bulb moment here. My brain had gone into freeze mode. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of flight, fight, freeze, fawn, and flop, I assume, but just in case you haven't, these are our body's natural defense mechanisms when we experience trauma. And they're ingrained in us from the prehistoric days. And you can still see them playing out in the animal kingdom if you go and watch any animal programs. And so this is my pattern. This is something I've observed in myself. My past history is that instead of dealing with my thoughts and emotions, there can be a lot of distraction, procrastination, cat hugging, tiredness, wanting to nap, numbing out with food, shopping, and generally just telling myself that I'm fine, it's likely just hormones, and to not be silly, that this will pass, that I need to just put up and shut up, to feel better by whatever means necessary and quickly because I feel like crap. As a result, my brain was throwing up all the signals that it could to direct me to all the things that it's learned in the past to give me comfort. And particularly on this day, my brain was shutting down so badly, it was basically telling me that I was absolutely dog tired, that I couldn't possibly do anything today, that I just had to give up and rest. But the funny thing is, it wasn't true. And so this is where it's really, really interesting to see how the metaphysical side of our bodies can go together. So basically, our thoughts have far more power than you might actually give them credit for when it comes to the physical. So physically, I was getting all the signs of tiredness, thick head, heavy limbs, my eyes were wanting to shut, feeling a bit irritated. To all intents and purposes, I was tired with a capital T. But then I took a step back so that I could understand what was going on inside of me. I'd just woken up. I'd had a good sleep. So this feeling of physical tiredness was an absolute lie. It was a physical manifestation due to me trying to avoid my feelings. My mind was sending all the signals to my body to get me to just check out for the day, so that between the pair of them, my mind and my body, they could ultimately strong arm whatever emotion was coming up back into the pit of my stomach and get it covered over as soon as possible, so that I couldn't feel it anymore and that the status quo could just resume. And so it was really a bit like the tickle that I was describing earlier. My mind and body was working against me, and it was involuntary, trying to take control. Now, to be fair to my poor dear darling brain, the 95% of my body and brain that works on autopilot, it didn't know any better. This was a well-worn path, and it was just trying to get me to take it, to look after myself. But I resisted, because I figured that if I let my mind and body win, if I buried the emotion, avoided whatever issue was coming up for me, and just tried to bulldoze my emotion out of the way, it would get trapped and hinder me later. It might have passed for a while, but that emotion ultimately would have peaked back out in terms of intrusive thoughts or tiredness, more procrastination, more eating, more shopping, more sleeping. So I needed to work it through fully. So in the Backstage Pass membership, I talk about us super sleuthing our way to weight loss, which is about using the AAA way method to figure out what is going on with our food relationship and with, just generally how life and weight loss is all fitting together. And there's also a mind injury section for self-coaching. And I'm also, fortunate enough to be training as a belief code facilitator as well. So I had all of these things to draw on. And so I set to work. So mindfulness plays a big part in my life nowadays, especially observing with that love and curiosity what is coming up for me, mind, body and spirit, really listening and querying what I have going on, how I think, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. And so I wanted to start working this through. And so I decided to start with a belief coding self-facilitation. And so in belief coding, we work with the subconscious. So some of what we come up with can sound a little bonkers at times. Sometimes the process that we go through, it can show us things that can seem a bit off the wall. But there is actually a clear process to go through, and there is a purpose, and you always realize that when you've been through the process. And so I started to process and ask my subconscious where this feeling of avoidance and resistance was coming. And again, my brain just kept going, no, go to sleep, no, go to sleep. And now for the weird part, and you might be wondering if you were watching on video why on earth there is a crab going across the screen. And so I get this image or sense in my head of me being a hermit crab, hence the crab. Fascinating, right? Or are you now thinking that, I've actually got some issues? But this little crab is poking its head out of its shell, darting back in and saying, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. And so I can instantly see the metaphor that's going on here. And I'm sure you're not surprised, you're very surprised to learn that I'm not actually a hermit crab. But it did fit because it's what I was feeling, this resistance and avoidance. And you can completely see how my brain, trying to explain what was going on to me because of this process that we go through, it was using the hermit crab as a metaphor. And so let's say what we work on in belief coding is the subconscious. And so ultimately we work on whatever is coming up, because whatever our brain is telling us is trying to tell us it for a reason. We just need to listen and work with it. So I spent some time, because you spend that time trying to work with whatever is coming up. So I was spending time working with this crap. But she kept talking and then hiding, talking and then hiding. And I was getting all these sort of bits and bobs of thoughts coming through, like it's weight loss, it's business, it's the house, it's work, it's this, it's that. But she did, to be fair to this little hermit crab, she did give me the inspiration to write this episode. But what she also gave me was the perfect excuse to avoid dealing with whatever emotion was trapped. And so I chose to write most of this show in avoidance, thinking it might help me to work through, which in part it did. And belief coding is a fascinating process, and I could tell that my mind was holding back. It was keeping the goods back, ultimately trying to keep me safe. So to be clear, when we're not in any real danger working with our subconscious, it won't show us anything that we can't handle. Just sometimes our brains don't know the difference between a big giant saber-toothed tiger and a bit of stress. So my brain just needed a little poke in the right direction so that I could start releasing the emotion. I contemplated reaching out for facilitation myself, because even facilitators need facilitators, coaches need coaches, etc. But I decided to go it alone. Hindsight probably would have been a little bit quicker, because it is quite hard to hold both spaces for yourself, being the facilitator and the facilitatee, which is totally a word, even if it's not. So anyway, going back to my little crap. So ended up taking a shower, trying to get my journal out, got my trusty journal out, and I started to pull at the threads of what were the conscious thoughts to see what was coming up. And so I wrote down all of my thoughts and feelings, and because to me that's the ultimate act of self-care. And it's really powerful if you want to work on your thoughts, mindfulness, and to self-coach, and ultimately something you can then take to coaching. Anywho, this crab was talking. Huzzah, finally it was talking after I'd kind of unlocked it a bit with this journaling that I was going through. And the thoughts started to unjumble themselves, and she was ultimately finally able to tell me that I was overwhelmed. Finally, I knew what had been bothering me. It was this feeling of overwhelm. And of course, it completely made sense, really, as to why I was then trying to avoid and resist and had this feeling of avoidance and resistance, because somehow I'd given my poor brain too much to do. And I'll be totally honest, it does happen a lot. I work a full-time job. I've got a business. I've got a house. I've got a family, friends, all of this trying to juggle. But at the end of the day, I do it because it's what I want to do more than anything in the world. So ultimately, we then work with the subconscious to make it happy. Cut a very long story short, I helped my hermit crab by giving her a magic map, a fuck it bucket for her feeling of overwhelm, my signature power colour pink, little candle, and she was finally happy. And in doing so, I was then able to code in some new beliefs to work me through the overwhelm, and the session was done. The best bit though, if you'd asked me in the morning how I was feeling, how that day would have gone, I would have said it's going to be like walking through soup. I would have tried to push it, but I would have procrastinated a lot. I would have procrastinated with the cat, and then probably sacked off the day, buffered on online games and Facebook in a mood about not having achieved everything that I wanted to do. But what actually happened, because of the fact that I worked on my feelings and I didn't ignore this icky feeling that I was having, my energy lifted instantly. And I mean instantly. All of a sudden, that tiredness was just gone. My head cleared. I started to make my magic map, aka I made a plan with regards to what I was going to do to get rid of the overwhelm, shut the lid on the bucket, lit a candle, put on my pink backlights, and I smashed out my day. So the moral of this story is learn how to process your emotions. They're not things to be ashamed of or scared of. They're indicators. Think of them like warning lights on your car, if you will. They can be a guide. They can be a source of self-reflection. They can tell you when it's time to take a break or give yourself that much needed rest. Or it might be okay to then push it a little bit further. And learning how to process our emotions is a tool that can help you to grow, to help you go beyond where you are, and to help you to get you where you want to be. From your emotions comes your actions. So if you want to change your life, you have to work on your thoughts and your emotions first. Right. That's it, folks, for this week. Before I go, I hope you found my little story interesting today. If you want to know more about how you can work with me to shift your own outdated beliefs around life, food, and weight loss, or anything, check out the description. And if you want to know when I am a fully accredited belief coder, because the process is absolutely awesome, drop me a message below or drop me a DM and I'll add you onto my wait list. Other than that, I will see you next week. Bye for now. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, if you want to boost your life and weight loss the AAA way, check out the relevant links for today's show in the description. Speak soon.